that unknown, and that's China, with the Shanghai Futures Exchange and more physical going to China, through China, and being in the futures market in China. And that's a factor I won't ignore. But we do have that kind of that unknown, and that's China, with the Shanghai Futures Exchange and more physical going to China, through China, and being in the futures market in China. And that's a factor I won't ignore. So I'm not going to discount everything I just said. I just want to say it's a tougher market to analyze, but it's also in a spot where could I be wrong? And yeah, and what would be that factor? It'd be the unknown. It'd be what we don't really know about the Shanghai Futures Exchange and the amount of demand that they may be exerting on, let's say, the Western banking cartels or elites that are very much winning most of the time in these markets. Yeah, and let me just confirm that a bit. I mean, we could get up to, let's just be really concerned. Let's say just get 40. And then it backs off and it builds, and then it gets sold off, and the banks get to cover their shorts and they're happy and they make money on some of their trades. And let's say it settles in at, let's just say 35, the breakout point, which is not unusual. A lot of commodities, once they make a breakout, they'll retest that breakout for a very short time and then start back up. And that could happen fairly easily, in my opinion. And so that wouldn't really hurt too many silver bulls unless they're leveraged. And they're over leveraged or whatever. So we could see that. And then, UBS knows that the equilibrium price based on silver, which is not the retail market, which I talked about so much, but how many silver bars are in inventory for investment or in industry. And that count is going down because those commercial bars are being used for solar panels and all the electronics and everything else. So that's been in a deficit for 4 years. So they're looking at it from that perspective, and they're kind of ignoring what the silver stackers are doing, because that's really, truly the silver market. It's a paper derivative market based on 1,000-ounce bars. And they say, you know what? The equilibrium's around 40. And they would know, probably more than me. I mean, I'm not a know-it-all. I'm a learn-it-all. I certainly don't know everything about the silver market. But that could be. So you could see it go up, the paper game gets played out to however it's going to play out, reestablish a base, or maybe just touch that 135 and right back up, and we get to 40. And then let's say it builds a base from 42 to 39 for months. And that's my old adage, silver will either scare you out or wear you out. You either get these huge moves up and down that scare the crap out of you, depending whether you're on the right side or the wrong side. And then it'll go sideways for so long you just get bored to tears. I just wish I never touched silver. I haven't lost any money. I bought at 35, but it's trading between 38 and 40, and it's not enough profit for me. I want it to break above 40 before I even want to think of selling. Yeah, it's the way the game is played, and it is a paper market. It's a derivatives market. The price you see on your screen, can you go buy physical for that price? No. No, you're going to pay a premium to a dealer, even if you take it off the exchange, which is the cheapest way to buy it. You're going to get 1,000-ounce bar. Is that really what you want? But let's say it is what you want. You're still going to have to pay for transportation. You're going to have to close out the contract. There's some fees involved. It's not going to add a lot to the price. But in some cases, the exchange said, we don't want to mess with 5 bars to Mr. Morgan. You got to settle in cash and send me a check with a note explaining the contract that I signed said I would agree to settle in cash, even though I stood for delivery. It's too much hassle. I've gotten a few of those over the years, Patrick, where I stood for delivery. My broker was hating me because it's a pain in the butt, but they did it for me. I ended up not getting delivery anyway. I got this check and this explanation. Wow. Now, I'm not saying it happens all the time, and we're talking 5,000 ounces or more. This guy's very wealthy, and he got 10 contracts or 50,000 ounces of silver for an individual, and they didn't get delivery. That's nothing in the realm of how much silver gets marked to, different accounts every delivery month, and even the non-delivery months. And what's interesting about those big moves of physical, it's really tagging a bunch of pallets on this side with a different bank name on it going over to this side. A lot of those are really dealer swaps
Mhm.
between each other. Uh, but
Yeah.
there's a lot more movement in silver on the COMEX than there's been in years past. I'm not denying that. But what I am trying to convey very strongly is that the mainstay players in the market 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, they're still there. They're still doing it. Well, I would say that, the crime of 1873, I mean, when
Mhm.
the Eastern establishment decided to go to a gold only standard, they had more control, and silver was demonetized officially, although really it did circulate, and the law was changed a few years later, but it really took a lot of emphasis out of silver as money to gold only as money. And that's been true from that time really forward. Of course, silver circulated as money in the United States through 1964. And no one really thought about it because there's really enough, uh, you know, because basically it was coinage and change, really. It wasn't like
Yeah.
people even thought of silver as a way to save for the future. It was just money of the realm. So when it changed, and Johnson basically said, silver's too valuable to be money. Wait a minute, money's supposed to be valuable, so we're going to start making
Yeah. Yeah.
these Johnson slugs. It came in subtly. No one made a big deal about it. Some people understood what was going on. I was one of them as an 11-year-old kid, but many adults just blew it off, didn't understand it at all. And of course, in the 70s, a few years after that happened, 1968 was the last year you could take a silver certificate and actually get silver for it. And after that, that
Oh.
was closed down. But it just basically needs like a generation to not see silver as coinage and being valuable, for everybody to have a new mindset that silver is not money, it's industry only. Who cares about it? It doesn't mean anything, and all those type of ideas that have been put out for you know for a long time. And it's only other nation states like India. You're not going to give them that idea. No, they won't buy it.
Yeah.
They've seen the rupee, as a worthless piece of paper all the way through, so they're going to buy silver and gold. Um, Latin American countries, more not as nearly as much as India, but there are parts of the world that understand the paper game, and there's places that don't. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of a battle as far as what is sound money, why is it important, is it tied to freedom and liberty, does it really mean anything, or is it just a bunch of eccentric old people that are called silver and gold bugs that really aren't with the real program. And of course, as a precious metals guy, there's so much behind the story of precious metals
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with precious metals. It has to do with an ideology and a political system that's based on control, and that's monetary control that affects everybody on the planet. And that's the big picture, and that's really my focus. Although silver's certainly a passion of mine, it's a subset. But as far as how important silver is, it's like voting with your dollars, voting with your pesos, voting with your euros. If there was enough votes that said I want real money and not this fake stuff, we would actually have the control. Because if we, the people, took all the silver off the exchanges and there wasn't anything left except bare shelves, industry's going to need it or they're going to die. And we would have the control to sell it to them at the price that we let them bid and bid and bid until we were satisfied that our silver was valuable enough in terms of fiat, in terms of oil, in terms of gold, in terms of wheat, that are willing to part with it. And that's just, a cranky old man talking about the value of any precious commodity, let alone silver, that's required for life, and that is, it could be a food stuff. The point is that silver is being money. There's no worries about it, fading away, being eaten by boll weevils or anything. It's been money for thousands of years, just like gold. And it's such a small market. If there were enough voters out there that voted and said, I want something of value rather than what the government tells me is valuable. And that's why, all this talk around silver stalling around 40 or whatever it does, I think in the long term doesn't mean a whole lot, because if we go the eventuality that all fiat has gone, there will be a time when there will be a run to silver worldwide,
Yeah.
because people finally woken up to the fact that the stuff that they print doesn't have a lot of value because it can print it to infinity. And if that takes place and we're headed that direction, then we'll have a whole different discussion in a few months probably. But for right now, I'm telling you, I call them as I see them, as you well know, and
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy it. You certainly should, but I would be cautious if I was not in the silver market right now. It's better value than gold by far due to the gold silver ratio. I just start taking a position and buy over time. And if you dollar cost average in, if the market does pull back substantially, we're buying a lot more for the same dollar value or the same dollar price, and build up that way. I don't like seeing people chase a market, but
Yeah.
there will be a time when they will, because they'll be desperate. They won't even care hardly what the price is. All they know is that their value of their currency is depreciating at such a fast rate, they'll do anything to preserve the purchasing power. Yeah, I've looked at that chart often. And for me to really get really comfortable with silver, as momentum being confirmed, and I'm, shouting out Michael Oliver for all the great work that he does. But for me, I'd want to see a 7-to-1 ratio. That would prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that, silver is really going to continue and do well. And then, realistically, if we just take all the data that we have and look at recent times, the average is around 50-to-1, which means silver from 100-to-1 ratio to 50-to-1 will double versus
Yeah.
gold. So if you're smart and you could swap your gold, let's say an IRA for silver, but you love gold, but you don't really like silver, but you're smart, you swap all your gold into silver, let silver's price get to a 50-to-1 ratio, which is the average over the last few decades, and then switch back into gold. I think that the reasonable targets right now are 50-to-1 as the beginning. If we get an overshoot, which we could, then we've already seen 33-to-1. It was there temporarily, but that was the ratio we've already seen in this market. So I think that's a target. That could be the high. And if we really overshoot and silver gets voted by, the world as being the place that, 1%, it'd only take 1% of the world's money moving the silver market to drive it to astronomical price. We got that, you could get the monetary ratio of 16-to-1. And if it really went ballistic, you could go beyond that. But, I like to see it step up. I mean, people talk about $100 silver, and I wrote about it in 2003. So I was out there in print. I can't take it back, nor do I wish to. But before you get there, you got to get to 50 again. And then you got to get to 50 and break it and to get above it, start trading 60 and 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95. You got to get there. And it should have no overhead resistance, because once we get to, 55, when we're there for a matter of days or weeks, there's no one that isn't holding silver at a nominal profit, not a true profit, depending how long you held your position. But the number's a bigger number than it's ever been. And so people will hold on to see how high is high. So that will be a momentum case where the owners of silver, all the retail, not all, but most of the retail, a lot of the institutions will say silver's going higher. So that means the float is next to nothing. So any new buying pressure will take it higher. And since silver is such a small market, I mean, you could see 100, fairly easy under those conditions. The problem is, are we going to see those conditions? And the reason I bring that back full circle, Patrick, is because what I said about retail. Why are people selling silver at 35, 36? Well, there's a numerous reason. I can't take a survey of everybody that's selling their silver, but some people are burnt out. Some people need the money. Some people have given up on the silver story. Some people inherited it and they don't know what to do with it. So there's lots of reasons, and I can't go through them all, but basically we've got to look on aggregate, on balance, what the majority is doing is selling back. They're not buying, which is in a way worrisome.